What up, everybody? It's Zane Denani again, doing a tight 10. Lots of news, lots of notes, more training camp. We had a preseason game. Fun times. Let's get into it. Starting off, we've got some information on Pat Fryermuth's potential role with the Steelers. It sounds like he's going to be pretty involved in this offense. And again, I've said this plenty of times, but I think that he's a guy that I like as a late best ball pick right now. In redraft leagues, it's a little bit tough because one of those situations where I'm like, is this guy going to really get, I don't know, 900 plus yards or something like that? And I don't think that's the case. But in best ball drafts, can he be a red zone threat? Can he get 600 yards? Can he do all those types of things? Yeah, I think he has a more secure role. I think he's a more secure player in general than a lot of tight ends that go in front of him, such as guys like Kate Otten, um, even Gunnar Helm, based off of the news that I heard today. So I'm definitely in on his price right now. Moving forward, we've got some information on Jayden Blue. Again, it sounds like he is in line for some complimentary duties behind uh, Javonte Williams. We've talked about this a lot through the offseason. Um, I think it's pretty likely that he has some sort of complimentary role. That means like maybe 5 to 10 touches a game, depending on how the game script is going. Being involved in the pass game. Now, being involved in the pass game for the Cowboys is less valuable given the fact that they have what I think are three really good receivers, obviously two elite ones, and then one that's up and coming in Ryan Flournoy. And then you've got the tight ends involved as well. So you're kind of looking at maybe being that, fourth option or fifth option in the pass game for the most part. So when you think about it that way, how much opportunity is there in the pass game? But I think when Jayden Blue's in there, they'll probably do some design stuff. They'll probably do some more nuanced routes, not necessarily just like, hey, leak out like Javonte was doing, but maybe some like Texas routes and different things like that. I think he's an interesting player. Um, we've got a lot on Marshon Lloyd, so I'll talk about him in totality. But it sounds like he's off to a good start in training camp, and he's poised to have a major role, quote unquote. Um, Josh Jacobs missed practice on August 6th, yesterday, Thursday, and Marshon Lloyd operated as the RB1. Now, obviously, Chris Brooks isn't there; he's on the NFI list. But at the same time, isn't it huge that a guy like Marshon Lloyd's even getting that opportunity? There's guys like Damian Martinez, there's Pierre Strong, there's other dudes that are in that locker room, and they're trusting him to have that role, even though he hasn't really played very much football over the past couple of years. So I think he's going to have a role in this offense. I think he's actually a really good bet at his cost right now. Obviously, everybody's worried about the injuries. You could say that about a lot of different players. And sometimes we just kind of overrate whether that's going to happen or not. So far, he's healthy. I think it's a good bet at this exact moment. Tank Dell practiced for the first time in a limited capacity. All reports on that is um, basically coming out and saying, hey, you know, this guy is going to be ramped up. Uh, yeah, this guy's going to be ramped up and just taking some time to do all of that and yeah, I mean it's just not going to be something that I think he's going to be practicing quite yet, but maybe in the next couple of weeks he might get more 11 on 11 or 7 on 7 type of work, but for now it's good that he's practicing. I think early in the season he'll probably have like a small role, and if he proves to be healthy and is able to take that workload day after day, that he'll be able to carve out a bigger role for himself. Still think Jaden Higgins will definitely be that wide receiver too, unless somehow Tank Dell gets to like that exact same level he was his rookie year. But it's unlikely that that would end up happening. The Steelers depth chart. I don't want to get too deep in this. Jalen Warren was listed as RB1. I still think there's going to be a healthy split with Rico Dowdle. There's more on that information that's coming up later in the show, but I'll just address that now. Um, the reports from literally yesterday's practice were that Rico Dowdle was the first running back in the walkthroughs, team drills, whatever you want to call it, right? So this is just going to be a healthy split. Like we shouldn't be overreacting to who's getting the first reps, who's getting the second reps, like all that kind of stuff. None of it really matters. At the end, it's just going to end up being some sort of split. I have pretty strong information that it's going to be Rico Dowdle that's going to do a lot of like the early down stuff. That doesn't mean Jalen Warren won't do any early down stuff, but that Jalen Warren will probably do more of the pass down stuff. And that doesn't mean that Rico won't do any pass down stuff, but it's just going to be split kind of like that. Um, so that's the way that we should play it for now. The Patriots wide receiver situation now. Romeo Dubs has been missing practice, and obviously, like there's probably going to be a rotation at wide receiver 3 between Pop Douglas, Mac Hollins. If Kayshon Bootie's on the team, it'd be Kayshon Bootie too. Um, so right now the roles are AJ Brown at X, Romeo Dubs at Z, and Pop Douglas in the slot. And that seems to be like the most popular thing that's going on right now. But I think that's going to end up shifting whenever they have a guy like Mac Hollins or Booty or even Kyle Williams on the field. They'll probably play a specific role that allows Romeo Dubs to play in the slot. That doesn't mean Romeo Dubs is going to be like 100% slot player, maybe not even 50%, but a 35% slot rate. Yeah, I think that's possible. We'll see what ends up happening there. I'll keep you guys updated. AD Mitchell, one of the picks that I think is pretty good late in drafts, because I think his skill set matches Gino. Gino's typically been a pretty good deep ball thrower, and so far, uh, it sounds like he's developed really strong chemistry with AD Mitchell. AD Mitchell went out there to visit him in Florida this offseason. They became good buddies, developed strong chemistry. I think the skill set match and what AD Mitchell is going to be asked to do matches what Geno Smith is usually good at if he has time to throw. I think he'll have more time to throw this year, which will help him. I'm pretty in at on AD Mitchell at his current cost. Not going to touch on all of these 49ers injuries. There's updates to that, but Dejon Stribling's back at practice. Jordan James, Kalen Black, Christian Kirk, and Mike Evans are not at practice. I'm still in on Dejon Stribling so far. Jalen Waddle's missing some practice right now. It's not believed to be serious. It was supposed to be like 4 or 5 days, according like from 2 days ago. So maybe like 3 or 4 more days from now. So I think by the time people listen to this, if you're listening to it a couple of days later, he might be practicing. So I'm not worried about Jalen Waddle at this moment. Um, I am somewhat buying this Saints running back situation that I talked about it with Pat Kerrane and Eric Bieniemy a little bit on the Spike Week podcast, but every like quote coming out of the Saints camp right now is, "Hey, this guy is, you know, running. This situation seems like a both situation at running back between Alvin Kamara, between Travis Etienne. People are using quotes that say both and two. Like those things to me like add up to where it seems like there is that kind of plan. I don't think Alvin Kamara is anything in the run game anymore. Like he's really zapped. Obviously, can be a strong pass catcher just by being like a really adequate like route runner out of the backfield. But I also don't think that Travis Etienne is that great of a running back. His metrics from last year weren't that great. Obviously, metrics can be based off of you know uh, a lot of times based off of like what your O line play is like too. But I don't think he adds anything in the run game necessarily. So I do think that like there's situations now his price keeps falling in drafts to where like in a best ball league and he's falling to like late fourth, maybe even early fifth sometimes. I'm okay with that price. Um, but his price earlier was like mid third round pick, and that was just a bad price. And then in redraft leagues right now, he's not a guy that I think is going to go out there and just like absolutely destroy fantasy by any means. And so, like in redraft, that's not the type of pick that I'm trying to make because there's other players that go in that exact same range, Rachel Tune being one, that I think are maybe not better, quote unquote, like median bets, but better upside bets. And that's kind of the way that I decide to play this like usually what I consider my RB2 role in fantasy. Um, moving forward, let's see, guys. What's next? Okay, we got some information on Kenneth Walker from Albert Breer and from Josh Simmons. Breer called Kenneth Walker the best every down back the Chiefs had had in a while. And then Josh Simmons, their offensive lineman, says it's extremely scary to have Kenneth Walker involved in the screen game. Kenneth Walker took another screen to the house in practice. I'm believing that Kenneth Walker is like this kind of like featured more every down, not every single down, but more featured running back that I think his role will end up being something like a 70, 75% opportunity share. And I think he can crush in that role. Now, the risk with him is that he's just never been a bill of health, and it's always been like an ankle here or something that's like kind of like kept him back a little bit. Um, and so that's why I have him as my RB7, which is behind James Cook and Chase Brown and Ashton Jeanty right now. But like still probably slightly above his ADP in terms of how I'm like believing in him. Patrick Mahomes seems to be like basically fine. He's taken every first team rep at practice. A lot of hype on Jacoby Lane lately, and I talked about this with Pat Kerrane and Eric Bieniemy for at least 25, maybe 30 minutes about him. I think he's a good bet to make as a late round pick right now. I was kind of like on the fence, and like yeah, there's a lot of hype, but things like that I'm reading are that it's not just like highlight plays. It's like hey, he's getting open, being targeted a lot by Lamar Jackson. He beat Marlon Humphrey deep. Things that I think are beneficial, and I think there's a lot of outs for him too. That he could be wide receiver 3. Rashad Bateman could get hurt. He could be wide receiver 2. Elijah Surratt could even end up, uh, you know, in this spot where he's good, and so is Jacoby Lane, and they're both on the field, and they're going to play a lot more 11 personnel this year with 3 wide receivers on the field, based off of everything that I've read. And so there's ways that both of these guys are on the field. Yeah, I'm open to Jacoby Lane as a late round pick right now. I think we follow that buzz at the moment and see where it goes. On the Insiders pod, they mentioned him as an potential wide receiver too versus Rashad Bateman, which I don't think is going to happen to early season, but could it happen later? Yeah, sure. Um, with Denzel Boston, there's been so much hype on him, like so much. Uh, yeah, I talked about this one too. Like a lot of what I'm hearing is more like, yeah, he's making a lot of like 50-50 ball catches, things like that, like some separation. Um, but like that is something that I don't fully buy. Now, what I do buy is that I think that he's going to play a ton this season. I think he'll be maybe not like week 1, but very early in the season, he'll definitely be like one of the 2 wide receivers and 2 wide receiver sets between him and Judy. And then I think KCC is probably going to end up playing that slot role. And then by some point in the season, I think you're going to see KCC end up taking on like a stronger role in the offense. And I think he'll probably ascend as like that real, um, probably number 2 target in the offense behind Harold Fanon. And then Denzel Boston being the 3rd target. And then whenever they go in 11 personnel, maybe they bring Judy back on, or it's going to be Isaiah Bond. I kind of think that Jerry Judy will fall by the wayside by like October or something like that. So, yeah, I think just bet on these 2 rookies. Not a bad bet right now. And Denzel Boston. I mean, there's buzz. He's probably going to play. That's all you can ask for when you're looking at later picks. Skipping some things. This podcast, Locked On Bengals, talked about Chase Brown being heavily involved in the pass game at training camp. Should be the number 3 target on the team, at the very least. I'm very high on Chase Brown. Um, I have him ranked number 9 overall in my rankings. I feel very good about that. I have him right behind James Cook, above Jonathan Taylor, above Ashton Jeanty. Very high on him. I think that they're going to really feature him. I think there's some other news that's going to come through too that I'll just talk about now. But they're going to do more under center plays, more play action. The under center plays, he's had more a way higher explosive run rate. I believe it was like 15% last year versus 6% out of shotgun. All of those things are going to lead to strong success, and he continually works on his pass game success as well. This is one where they're talking about him being in the slot, and I know like there's a lot of times where we hear that um, you know, in fantasy and in training camp, and like it doesn't really come to fruition. But Chase Brown's one of the guys that I think can somewhat operate in that role, where I think he's a good enough route runner, especially if he's improving a little bit over the offseason. So I think he can operate in some of that role. Now, is he going to be the number two target in the pass offense? Probably not on most occasions. But let's say that for some reason, like, are there games where he will be the number two target in the offense? Yeah, if the team plays too high and they send T. Higgins deep a lot, I could see a lot of check down passes to Chase Brown. I think he's going to be really involved in the pass game. I think that's the statement to take from this. I had to talk about him for a long time in this one. Pat Bryant's another one that I want to spend a good minute on, but it was speculative. But Andrew Mason was talking about Pat Bryant as kind of transitioning into this X role and taking over for Cortland Sutton, and I feel pretty strongly about the fact that Cortland Sutton could see a strong decline this year. Not, I don't think that's going to happen at the beginning of the season. I don't think they're going to replace him immediately. But do I think that Cortland Sutton could end up like last year? You know, he was an 80% route runner. Do I think that he could end up at like 70% or 65%, and then Pat Bryant like ascends to this? He's the wide receiver three, and then sometimes there's plays on the field where Cortland Sutton's not on there and Pat Bryant's on there instead. Yeah, I could see that happening. And then, you know, what if Sutton turns an ankle? What if Pat Bryant's just really good and they decide, hey, we want to turn it over to him? I think Pat Bryant's a really good, kind of late round pick at the moment uh, to just throw a dart on. I think that there's potential for this offense to ascend with a guy like Jalen Waddle, where the wide receiver two in this offense could be valuable in fantasy, especially in best ball. I think best ball, it's a good pick. Dynasty, another guy that I would buy as well. A lot of praise for Jaden Higgins coming out of practice. D'Amico Ryans, CJ Stroud, Nico Collins, everybody's talking big about him. Sounds like he's going to start and he's going to play a lot. And you know, a lot of film guys that I know really liked his film from his rookie year. People think of him as a potential breakout. I think he's a good pick right now, and I think that that offense could be a little bit better year over year, just because I think they'll have improved blocking. Maybe not early in the season, but by like mid season, just given like there's less continuity there. But yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. Aronde Gadsden, he was seen on punt unit, kick return. You know, there's two wide receiver sets where Kolar and Joku are out there, and then sometimes where it's Kolar and Gadsden. I just think this is going to be a big split. Maybe there's games where they're down and they just decide, hey, we're going to throw in Aronde Gadsden. But right now, it sounds like this is just going to be some weird split. So I've been like lowering him a lot in my rankings. I don't really believe that he's going to be on the field a ton. I think his talent's good, but do they need another pass catcher? Like, if they needed another pass catcher, would they just put in Trey Harris? Uh, do they feel like the functionality of a Charlie Kolar is just more important? Being able to sell that it's a run play and do play action, like I think that it's possible. We could see him in like this Darren Waller role from last year where he was running like 40% of the routes sometimes, but still like making an impact. But then, yeah, I think that like he's just not a guy I'm targeting right now. I was originally really in on him, and now I'm not. Sounds like there's a clear top three wide receivers for the Chargers. Trey Harris being one of them. Obviously, Ladd is the focal point, and then Quentin Johnston. Moving on, we had a mysterious absence from Romeo Dubs yesterday at practice. Um, I don't have the report for today yet, but I did see him on the jugs machine, so I think that it's not a huge deal. I think it's just like a medium. I don't know exactly what it was. I think it was a lower body thing. But yeah, I don't think I'm worried about it just yet. I will keep you guys updated in case there is. Kyle Williams worked with the second team, even though Romeo Dubs was, missing, which means I think Kyle Williams' season is just over for now. Eli Stowers, yeah, guys, he's just not playing very much, and he's not doing much at training camp. And people have just not been that impressed. And you know what? This is a guy that switched positions. Obviously, had an amazing season in the SEC last year as a tight end. Um, it just doesn't sound like he's going to have like a role in this offense unless there's like probably multiple injuries. Because even if they Goddard got injured, I think Johnny Munt would play tight end and then like slot tight end. I don't think they would use that role as much. I think they would just like go to 11 personnel with Mekhi Lemon there, um, with one tight end on the field. So everything that I've read is just that he needs some more time. That doesn't mean he can't be a good dynasty asset. I mean, this news might make his stock drop. It might be a good time to buy. I just think that for now, for this season, I just don't think he's going to do very much. So I'm not really taking much of Eli Stowers right now. The Bucks are being cautious with Jalen McMillan for now, so I'm not worried about his injury. He had like a minor like lower body thing. This was exciting on Josh Downs, and I've been pumping Josh Downs for a long time now. So obviously take as much of that as a grain of salt as you possibly can. But it's awesome. The Colts can help him evade that press coverage by putting him in pre-snap motion or lining him up off the line of scrimmage, and that's something that I really value. It's exactly how I would deploy a guy like Josh Downs. Is exactly how Zay Flowers is deployed. They don't put him on the line of scrimmage. They get him in motion. They get him free releases because he's a smaller guy. And then they're able to get him in really favorable situations because they're both good route runners. um, I'm very interested in Josh Downs, even if they sign Keenan Allen. I've been hammering that draft Josh Downs. He's one of my guys this year for sure. There's been a lot on Chris Rodriguez. So he's been, the pads have come on and he's been a thumper and has been getting like positive yardage on like tight situations. So I think and then there was the practice report today where, I'll show it on the screen later, but Bashal Tutin was kind of like the lead back where he was getting a lot of the work. And then there was Chris Rodriguez who would get brought in whenever they were inside the 10-yard line. And then LaQuint Allen was coming in on third downs for like pass down duty. Now, does that sound like a great role for Bashal Tutin? It does not. It sounds good. It doesn't sound great. Uh, but I think that it, this seems like what the initial plan is, right? It doesn't sound good for Chris Rodriguez either, to be quite honest. It sounds like this is what the initial plan is. And so since there's this initial plan, um, I think that we have to kind of run with that and say we have to extrapolate and think through it on our own, and say, hey, do we think that this guy will end up um, ascending and taking on more? Do you did he do a good job on goal line last year? He did. Is there a possibility that he gets it back? What about the pass game? All sorts of stuff like that. I don't envision a way that Bashal Tutin week one is getting like 20 touches. It's just not going to happen. I think they want to see it, have him prove it over the course of like early season games. And then if he does well, then they'll lean into that. If Chris Rodriguez is doing better, sure, they can lean into that a little bit more. Um, so I'm not going to read into that situation too much because it's exactly what I thought it would be. Parker Washington is an animal. He gets to the facility between 4:45, 4:55 a.m. and 5 a.m. Yeah, he just works his butt off, and then he goes to sleep by like 8:30 and does it all again every single day. And that's just an absolute maniac of a person. Um, it is different than what traditionally like most players do. It's a little bit more, and that's what's needed sometimes, especially for guys that weren't like top end athletes. I haven't read much that points to the position that the Giants offense looks good so far in training camp. It's been a lot of negative feedback. Um, and specifically in this podcast, the Giants Nation show, they were talking about um, basically like there's the footwork stuff, the new system, and then a lot of blame on Matt Nagy and how he's running this like show. And that's exactly what I feared. Now it's early, right? It's early in training camp. There's so much more time. There's 5 more weeks of the season happens, so things can definitely change. I don't want to like go too far in one direction, but the drumbeat is leaning in the direction that I thought that it might lean into. And so I am very skeptical of this offense doing very well this season specifically. I like Jackson Dart as a prospect still. I think he's got a lot, and especially from a fantasy perspective. Um, but for this season, I'm just not that interested because I think that there's a lot of ways this all kind of like fails. I've got a thing that I actually need to attend, so I'm actually going to take off. This is obviously a small, tight 10 that I did, and there's plenty more news that I got to do. But family things come up, and then you just got to kind of cut out. So appreciate the time, guys. I will answer some of these questions in a different format, maybe on Twitter. If you guys want to message me there, I'm happy to do that. Really appreciate the time from Zane Denani. Thanks, guys.